Prynhawn, welcome to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council's Governance and Audit Committee of Monday the 14th of July 2025. Do we have any apologies for absence? Just Martin Veal. And are there any declarations of interest? Nope. None recorded. And there's a copy of the minutes in the agenda pack, which you should have had the opportunity to read. Are there any comments on those minutes?
Hello, can you hear me,
Yes,
Chair?
Councillor Barry.
Oh, right, sorry. Apologies, I've got to leave at 2:45, unfortunately. I don't know. Is my camera on? Can you see my camera? I don't get my camera on you.
No, it's not at the moment.
Apologies for that.
Okay, can somebody accept those minutes as correct? Okay. And second? Yeah. Thank you. So they're carried. I return to the action log. The only one I noted on there was the risk workshop, which has now been allocated for this Wednesday. Any other comments on that?
Sorry, Chair. It's a training session this Wednesday. A lot of members can't make it because we've got a council meeting. Can we arrange a date to take it far forward? Because I think we've got to know what we're talking about when you're talking figures. Yeah.
Yeah, I think perhaps we'll discuss after the meeting, and members will be updated. And then the other matter on there was the corporate risk register. I was looking for dated progress on that. Is there any date? Is there any dates on that, Andrew?
So it came to the last meeting. I think we ended Q4. We give the annual report, and it's due to go in September now. So rather than bring risk on its own, we bring in risk, finance, and performance together.
That's great, thank you. Any further comment on the forward work plan? Not the forward work plan. The action plan. Yeah. No, thank you. Okay, so we move on to our colleagues at Audit Wales with the work programme. Who do we have speaking for us?
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to introduce myself, my name's Gareth Lucy. I'm the Engagement Director from Audit Wales, responsible for delivery of all of our audit work here at the Council. So the first item that we've got on the agenda here this afternoon is our work programme and timetable. So this is a document you will have regularly received in the past. So hopefully not too much to set out in terms of the format and so on. I'll just quickly run through the first page of that work programme on page 17 of your packs. I'll hand over to Sarah Jane then, who'll run through some of the details on the performance audit delivery side as well. So on that first page, it sets out our annual audit summary. That's to follow later on in the agenda. So you'll see that as part of your packs there. We'll be discussing that later on. In terms of our financial audit work, this document summarises the position as at 31st of March 2025. And obviously things have moved on a little bit since then. So this summarises the position as of then. But since then, as you look down that list, the audit of the 23-24 statement of accounts has been completed. Those accounts were certified on the 12th of June. And the audit of all of the 23-24 grant claims and returns has also been completed. So fundamentally, from a financial audit perspective, all of that work is now complete. And we're now at the stage where we're just starting planning processes for the audit of the 24-25 statement of accounts. So we're in liaison with the finance team now to work through a timetable for production and audit of that. So that was about it on that side of things, Chair. I'll hand over to Sarah Jane now, who'll talk through the rest of the update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the performance audit work, just a few things I'll highlight because, as Gareth says, it is as of the end of March. So the unscheduled care report there, we're currently drafting that, but hopefully we'll be in a position to bring that along to one of the future meetings. So we'll discuss with the council whether it be this committee or another committee. In terms of the commissioning, that's on the agenda today. So my colleague Martin Gibson will be talking that through with you shortly. Our local work then was on planning, and again, this is on the agenda today, and my colleague Matt Brichette will cover that report. Our other local review is on counter fraud, and we're currently drafting the report for that, having completed the field work. And again, I'm sure that report will be coming your way, probably early autumn. The update also then covers our local government studies. I just wanted to provide a bit of an update on the temporary accommodation because the fieldwork for that has now been completed and we're about to publish the report, probably very imminently. And then the capital planning fieldwork has also been done and we're drafting the report. Merthyr wasn't one of the tracer sites for that study. In terms of the piece of work on children's services, just to let you know that we've been discussing the scope of that work with CIW and the executive group of ADSS. And the update also includes a brief overview of the work of SDN and CIW and the national reports that we produce. But I just wanted to highlight the Sustainable Development Report because that was published recently and there's been a number of events as well. And then at the end of the update, it includes our good practice exchange events and resources. And this includes the cost of failure and financial management and governance event. And there's a link to the presentation and documents, so I thought it would be worth flagging that to members. But happy to take any questions. Just to say, we will shortly be sharing the Q1 update with you, which will capture some of what we've discussed today. But yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you both for those updates. Anything from the floor or teams? No, does not like it. So one thing I was going to raise with you was with the corporate joint committees. So when we're looking at the well-being of future generations and sustainable development, Audit Wales input appears very limited to date. So in the round, how do you feel you're discharging that responsibility?
Specifically for the corporate joint committees, they are named bodies under the Act now. So we have done a piece of work. We published a report about 18 months or so ago that did cover some aspects of that. Going forward, we will integrate that in terms of the work that we will be doing. It is likely that we will also do a follow-up piece of work on that report that we published 18 months or so ago. So just to reassure you, it is very much on our radar. Thank you.
Turn on the microphone now. Could I also then ask you how you feel Audit Wales sits with the investment strategy that the corporate joint committees have to deliver on, and what support you feel Audit Wales can give to that?
I'm on, sorry, I wasn't sure I was on, sorry. I mean, I guess in terms of the investment strategy itself, obviously that's a policy decision. We wouldn't get involved in terms of making an opinion on that. Our work is very much focused on that we do around the accounts and our kind of proper arrangements duty. So it depends what we're looking at. So I don't think it's be appropriate really for us to make a specific comment on that. We do have regular kind of liaison meetings with each of the corporate joint committees where we talk through, any particular issues and things like that the CJCs have, or anything pertinent to our piece of work. But at the moment, I'm not aware of anything specific on the investment strategy as such. I'm not actually involved in that audit, but I can take that back and double check. And if there is anything, come back to you, but certainly not aware of anything specific at this stage.
Yeah, thank you. It was just obviously that the council has got a financial interest, a significant financial interest and aspirations in that area. Thanks. Councillor Barry?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a specific question on the capital planning in local government. I see we're not on the interview list there, but is that just a paper in terms of keeping pace with the investment required with our asset base, or is there comment on that with it in terms of affordability?
Chair, you happy for me to pick that up? So
Yes, please do.
So it will look at it's very much focused on the arrangements that those councils have in place, and we'll take a kind of broader view in terms of what that means for the whole of local government. It wouldn't necessarily look in detail at the affordability as far as I'm aware, but more things like, the arrangements that the council have got to plan that capital programme, how they oversee it, that kind of thing.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, so I think we can move along. Is it the review of planning services? Next.
Yeah, apologies. I was just having trouble with my microphone there. Good afternoon, Chair. Hope you can hear me, and good afternoon, members. So this is our one of our local audits for the council for 24-25. The audit was undertaken between December and February this year, so December 2024, sorry. The main question we set for this audit was, does the planning service demonstrate proper arrangements to secure value for money in the use of its resources? And the focus of the audit included development control, planning enforcement and planning policy, and whether the planning service has objectives aligned to the corporate strategic priorities, clarity and understanding of roles and responsibilities, and arrangements to review and monitor performance. The audit didn't look at individual planning decisions, so it was more the arrangements for the service itself. So the main finding for the audit was there's weaknesses in the corporate oversight and performance of the planning service, and as a result, there's a lack of awareness of how the service supports the delivery of the council's objectives. In reaching the conclusion, we found the service lacks a comprehensive service plan to shape the delivery and set out how it's supporting council to meet its objectives. But we found teams are well supported and clear about their roles and responsibilities, but there's limited workforce planning, which is creating risks to their future resilience. We looked at the planning committee and we found that it's not always acting in a transparent way. And finally, we found the council doesn't have the corporate oversight of the planning service to assess whether it's having an impact or manage its risks. I should say, despite these key findings, we should also highlight some positive areas. So we found no major issues with the performance of the service itself. And we were particularly struck by the positive culture and the strong communication within the team. We could see the team has also got good access to training opportunities within the budget constraints. So we made 4 recommendations for the audit. The first was around developing a planning and building control service plan. Secondly, to update the current terms of reference for the planning committee. Thirdly, we'd like to see more transparent decision making from the planning committee. And lastly, just to ensure council reports, monitors and oversees the activity of the planning service. So on the back of this, our Code of Audit Practice requires us to issue and review a management response. I'm pleased to say the council's completed this, and we're assured that the council has properly considered the report and recommendations, and we're encouraged to see some progress has already been made towards this. So just to summarise, we see this as an opportunity for the council to recognise the positive contributions the service makes to the council as a whole, and also in strengthening the areas highlighted in the recommendations. Lastly, just to say thank you to Judith and to Craig and their team for their time, and particularly for the open and honest engagement throughout the work. And I think that's about it. I'll hand back over to the chair and happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. I don't know if we have someone that would like to respond to those that or enlarge on that management response. I think as a committee, we think there may be further work for us to do in support of those findings that you've made.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to come in to respond to those. So in relation to each recommendation, we have accepted each recommendation and can assure the committee that they will be addressed on time. In relation to recommendation 1, the service plan, in line with other departments across the authority, service plans are being developed based on the findings of the self-evaluation carried out earlier this year. I'm pleased to say the first draft is underway and it will be finalised by the August deadline. Recommendation 2, update to the terms of reference. The Planning Code of Conduct section of the Constitution will be updated to outline the role and responsibility of planning committee members. This section was written and sent to legal in June to include in the next update of the Constitution. It has also been sent to Democratic Services to add to the Members Hub and is with the translation unit prior to being added to the planning webpage. Recommendation 3, transparent decision making. This issue was addressed prior to receiving the recommendation following the verbal feedback given to myself by Matthew, and Planning Committee has been operating in this way since February this year. And recommendation 4 on reporting and oversight. The details of how the performance of the planning department will be monitored and overseen are provided, and these include reports to the Thriving Scrutiny Committee, the Planning Committee and the Cabinet during the year. I would, however, advise committee that whilst the Audit Wales report at para 27 and 29 states that no reporting has taken place, I can inform the committee that performance in dealing with delegated planning applications and appeals is reported to Planning Committee quarterly, and that the Neighbourhood Services Scrutiny Committee, as was, received a report on planning enforcement service in January this year and held workshops to discuss LDP allocations in October last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Judith. Yeah, I think one of the concerning areas was about the planning committee process and stop-start on the meetings, and the sort of the potential to undermine the democratic process, really. So, is there a monitoring process for that going forward?
So yeah, when that was brought to my attention, we amended the procedure for that, and as of February this year, then those procedures have changed to ensure that all deliberations on planning applications are conducted in public now.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. So I think as a committee we'll pay close attention to planning going forward within our remit, which obviously is process. Thank you. Any questions from members?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the answers are tidy. We'll come back. But where have we been for the last couple of years? Have we a slip up in planning because we can't afford to have mistakes in planning? But do the committee work closely together as a planning committee? Because that's a weakness. They said that the committee wasn't working tidy.
Yes, so that particular recommendation referred to the practice where if members voted to overturn officer's recommendation, right, they will leave in the chamber to discuss reasons for refusal, and that was seen as not being obviously transparent. So that's the reason for the recommendation. As I say, we've now addressed that to ensure that all deliberations on planning applications take place in the chamber in public.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. On the same point, do you believe perhaps that members need extra training for their roles on the planning committee so they fully understand what it involves?
So when members are elected, we give comprehensive training in line with WLGA guidance. We also take the opportunity to give further training on specific topics or new policies and procedures that are brought in. Most recently, we've done that on HMOs, for example. So I think when opportunities arise and when needs are brought to our attention, then yeah, we do carry out the necessary training.
Thank you. And if I can ask another question, Chair. As a principal counsel and for the transparency, as all the recordings of the planning committee meetings published on our YouTube channel?
As far as I'm aware, yes, but obviously that's something that comes under Democratic Services remit.
Okay. I don't know if anyone from the audit wants to say, as a principal counsel, does it has to be broadcast just for confirmation, really?
I think for us it's really about the just the general transparency of planning committee, just in terms of the processes there. While I'm not sure about the actual requirement to actually put those recordings out there, I mean that's a matter for the council themselves, just to ensure that you're satisfied that there is a transparent process that's accessible to the public. Obviously, there's guidelines set out on that, but it was just particularly evident to us. It was more of an issue, really, just the process in terms of certain discussions that weren't actually taking place in the committee themselves, which seemed like quite a straightforward aspect to resolve. And I can see that the process has been tweaked now to address that. The matter of the recordings, I think that's something for the council to look into, and just to give itself the assurance that they're complying with any due process.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. If we could minute that for Democratic Services to find that out for us. We can move to Councillor Barry.
Councillor Thomas stole my thunder, to be honest. It was on the same issue, not necessarily for the planning department, but in terms of openness and transparency, it is the way most of our public, I would suggest, access our planning decisions. And if those broadcasts go missing, or they're not broadcast, the legislation says they're meant to be broadcast, and the legislation also says if there's no broadcast, there's an emissions report, which have not been. So in terms of, I see your remit is specifically to do with the planning department, but I would suggest that the openness and transparency goes a lot further, and it can't be seen in isolation. So I welcome your recommendation, Chair, to look into that further, because the one outstanding planning application, which was the Redcar West one some months ago, it was said to be the largest planning application for 20 years, and it never appeared, and still is yet to appear on our website. And that just speaks to openness and transparency on a scale which I think goes outside the remit of planning. But I think, having said that, it is vitally important that aspect of it is adhered to. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. I'll just come in just to reiterate what Matthew's advised there. As you might already be aware, Councillor Barry, the issue with that particular meeting was due to the number of people accessing the online meeting, and that caused issues with the recording. But I think a lot of the issues you address and the clarity you're looking for, there was a report that was due to come to Council last week regarding the monthly location meeting policy, which does cover obligations under recording. So when that comes back to full council, as you know, it was deferred as further discussion was needed. There's an opportunity there, I think, to discuss these issues in more detail.
Thank you for that clarity. Okay, any more questions on that subject? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the comment there, it's already in legislation. There should have been an emissions report. The failure of an emissions report has further implications. So we can bring more reports, but the legislation already covers the openness and transparency that should be there for these issues. So I look forward to this report, but it doesn't address what's already happened, and that huge application never seeing the light of day for the public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. So if we can return then to... Oh, sorry. Yes, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to refer to a public statement that the council put out about this shortly after. It was suggested that the lack of a broadcast being available alongside the minutes was in contravention of Section 4 of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021. However, the mandating of electronic broadcasting of meetings applies to proceedings of Principal Council, the executive of a Principal Council and any joint subcommittees. That does not relate to Planning Committee, and that was put out in a public statement. But we have double checked all our broadcastings and we are compliant, Chair. But we can bring something back to this committee if that's requested.
Yes, I think if we could, Sarah, I think that would perhaps would that answer your query, Councillor Barry?
I think so. However, I would suggest you look at the legislation again, because it does cover subcommittees of the Principal Council, which this is. So I think that you need to look at the statement again and go back to the legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If we can move on to item 7 then, which is back to Audit Wales, and it's Matthew Projet.
Sorry, Chair, I think I'm handing over to my colleague Martin Gibson now on this one. Thank you.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Chair. This audit was part of a national thematic review, which was carried out in all 22 councils of Wales, with a local report being produced for each council. In addition to this local report, Audit Wales intends to publish a further national report that draws upon our findings across Wales. I think I go any further, I'd like to clarify the definition of commissioning as we've used it for this particular report. So when we refer to commissioning, we mean that the decision-making process that every council uses to decide how best it can deliver its services. It's the process that leads up to the decision and how it will either make, buy, start or stop delivering a service. This review did not extend to procurement activity or to arrangements for managing contracts. The focus of the audit was to determine the extent that the council's corporate arrangements support and guide services when considering commissioning a service, and to provide assurance to the council that a decision on which service delivery option offers best value for money consistently, considering a minimum range of factors. We also reviewed how the council developed its commissioning arrangements in accordance with the Sustainable Development Principle that will help the council to secure value for money. We reviewed the council's corporate commissioning arrangements and then tested these arrangements by examining the process of 2 services that had previously commissioned. And we consulted with the council's officers when selecting those services that we did examine. We also met with the responsible officers for the 2 services, as well as officers responsible for supporting services through a commissioning process. We conducted this work in November of 2024, and this report reflects the arrangements the council had in place at that time. So the overall audit question was that in commissioning services, does the council put in proper arrangements to secure value for money in the use of its resources? Looking at what we've found that many councils of Wales, as I said, this is a thematic, and we've done it in all councils of Wales, and we've found that many councils have struggled to demonstrate corporate commissioning arrangements that are consistently applied across the organisation and that informs the decision to make or buy and precedes the procurement process. Looking at this report specifically for Merthyr, there are many positive aspects within this report. And in the spirit of seeking improvement and making the most of this committee's time, I intend only to highlight those aspects that support our recommendations to improvement. But I do want to emphasise the many positive aspects as well. So to highlight those particular points, the business case template within the council's commissioning arrangements does not require service areas to be explicit on the expected outcome of a service. However, one of the 2 services we examined was clear on the outcomes and how these are to be assessed. The council's commissioning arrangements require service areas to consider the timescale for each of its services. However, both the services we examined, the council was not able to explain the rationale for the timescales for the commissioned service, and these hadn't been reviewed for many years. The council's commissioning arrangements do not require services to consider the well-being objectives or priorities of other public sector bodies. Despite this, the services we reviewed could demonstrate partnership working and collaboration, which supports other bodies in the delivery of their priorities. While the Council has arrangements to support and guide services when commissioning activity, the Council does not monitor if service areas are routinely complying with these arrangements or explaining why they have not complied with those arrangements. And finally, the Council's commissioning arrangements do not have a structured approach for reviewing their effectiveness. The Council also does not have a consistent approach to share lessons learned from commissioning activity across the organisation. Therefore, in conclusion, mindful of the shortcomings I've just identified, but also, again, to acknowledge the many positive aspects covered within our report, we've concluded that the Council has arrangements to support the commissioning of services. There is a lack of corporate oversight and evaluation, which limits the Council's assurance on whether it's securing value for money from its commissioned services. In response to those few shortcomings, we've made 3 recommendations. The first recommendation is to avoid duplication and identify opportunities to secure multiple benefits. The Council should routinely consider the potential impact of the wellbeing objectives of other public sector bodies when commissioning services. Our second recommendation is about compliance. To ensure that the Council's corporate approach to commissioning is consistently implemented across service areas, the Council should introduce arrangements to monitor compliance. And the third recommendation is to ensure that the Council identifies opportunities to improve value for money. It should clarify the expectations on the frequency with which service delivery options should be reviewed once commissioned. It should routinely evaluate the effectiveness of its commissioned arrangements, and finally, to share learning across the organisation. The councillors, after receiving our final report, the Council considered the recommendations, and they then submitted to us a management response form to make clear what their actions they were intended to make, the officers responsible, and also the time frame for those actions. Our code of audit practice requires us to consider the Council's response, and we can confirm that we are satisfied with the Council's proposed actions to our recommendations. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to hand back to you now to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Martin. Obviously, combined with your report and the management response, the piece of work appeared necessary, and I think the response has been appropriate. We've all been on a similar journey for the last couple of years, which I think is capacity has been the Council's issue. I don't know if Craig, you'd like to touch on those points.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you, Martin, and Audit Wales colleagues who undertook the audit fieldwork and the review. Just briefly from me, and specifically in relation to the management response, I just want to reiterate we accept the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 and provide a commitment to undertaking a review during the current financial year, and the outcome of that review will be reported regularly through our liaison meetings with Audit Wales colleagues and via the assurance and risk assessment process, which will then be reported back to this committee. Specifically in relation to recommendation 1 and the wider consideration of the potential impact on the wellbeing objectives of other public sector bodies when commissioning services, it's fair to say that there remains a timing issue of engagement with partners, particularly around the conversation of how we design services and how we intend to deliver. That forms part of the complex nature of partnership working and discussions. But I can provide assurance to the committee today that progress has been made with regards to strengthening compliance corporately and the governance arrangements that sit within that. And I can evidence that we've already strengthened this by way of the reintroduction of the commercial governance group that now meets on a monthly basis. This group has got a focus on commission services alongside wider commercial and procurement activity across the council, and this group will routinely consider the impact of commission services and the potential impact on wellbeing objectives, ensure that there is a consistent approach to commission services across all services of the council, and consider value for money proposals at specific frequencies in the commissioning cycle, and by evaluating the effectiveness of the council and commission ranges as a whole. This feeds into pre-procurement processes where commission services are being procured externally. Committee will also be aware that the report being presented today forms part of a wider national study which has attracted a lot of interest. We therefore await with interest the publication of the All Wales report, which will allow us to understand common issues across the 22 local authorities, alongside identifying opportunities to learn lessons from others. This study focuses on the commission arrangements and activity within 2 service areas only across the local authority. However, as this report and its recommendations focuses on corporate oversight, I remain happy to stick with the management response provided, and that will be put before committee today for noting and debating. Chair will stop there and refer back to committee to the recommendations within the report.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Craig. I think we're reassured by that response. I think as a committee we need to obviously closely monitor in our role that those processes are fit for purpose going forward. Thanks. Can I put it to the floor? Yes, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Craig, for that update. I was interested to hear about the commercial governance group. That's quite a new activity, I suppose, in the authority. What we're talking about here is so important for the residents and for outcomes, in Merthyr. So we spend millions in core and grant funding out there to commission services. Could we possibly have a report, at some point, if it's just an information report that will come to the council or to government and order, but I think it should come to council as well for all members to see on the total spends and the positive or negative outcomes that we've had for commission services. So, when you make decisions in the future, you could base it that information, that data is useful for basing future decisions and who you commission with.
Maybe we can take this offline and determine the requirements of that particular report. Obviously, transparency is a key with regards to the local authority, and we can bring forward the outcomes of the commission services at set intervals. I don't see that being an issue.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on sort of commission services at core level, core budget is absolutely fine. I think there's an area missing here for me, which is commissioning of grant services. When you consider over the last 3 years, we've had £32 million worth of shared prosperity funding. We need the assurance that what applies to core applies to grant. First of all, have Audit Wales got a comment on that? And then secondly, is there a report that's required that aligns the two?
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Would Audit Wales like to comment on that?
Yeah, I can. The review was about corporate commissioning arrangements, and the vehicle for actually delivering services is almost irrelevant in relation to its commissioning arrangements. The commissioning arrangements should consider the various options available and to understand the factors on each of the service delivery options, and then to use that information to determine which is the most appropriate for the council. So whether the actual decision on whether it should make itself or to buy from the go-to-market, in other words, would be a product of the corporate commissioning arrangements in terms of this particular audit.
Yes, thank for that clarification. Any further questions? No, okay. If I could circle back on Audit Wales, at the end of, I think, item 5, I was thinking that we were going to be having the annual audit summary. Is there still an update to come for that?
Yes, there is, Chair. So happy to take that after this item, if that works.
Yes. Councillor Barry?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the comment from Audit Wales there. Do you think there would be mileage in having a report which aligns the two? That's probably for one of the officers.
I wonder whether we're crossing boundaries here. I think Martin sort of concentrated on what's appropriate for the Governance and Audit Committee. Perhaps we need to find a home for this, this discussion, which obviously is worthy, but perhaps outside of our remit.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Go along with that. Chair, I'm going to have to withdraw now, unfortunately. I have contract commitments.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Yeah, would you like to continue with the audit summary? Thank you.
A tour of Audit Wales staff comes back to myself and Sarah Jane again now. So this is our annual audit summary. So this is our standard document that we issue to every council each year, summarising the work that we've performed and the conclusions arising from them. So fundamentally, it's a summary of all the work that we've done. What this document allows us to do, though, this year is incorporate an overall message at the start of this report if we feel that there's something particularly important that needs to be said or something that's relevant from the work that's arising. And that's what we've introduced into the annual audit summary this year. So you'll see on page 1 of the summary, you'll see an overall findings box that sets out the overall context as we see it of the results of our work this year. And just to recap, I think what the overall message is, fundamentally, we've had we've noticed some issues really coming out of our audit work over the past 12 months or so, crossing over between our performance audit work, so the work that we've done over financial planning, performance management and governance, but also some issues around production of statements of accounts due to significant staffing changes in the year, led to a large number of vacancies in the finance department, which meant that the accounts production has run behind schedule somewhat for the past year or so. Obviously, in sort of mapping that together, we're bearing in mind where the councils come from. So, set out the context there that in 2019, there were similar concerns around some of the governance and capacity around the council. There was support proactively obtained from Welsh Government, and both we and the Improvement Board at the time were satisfied that progress had been made. But we did feel it would be remiss of us at this stage if we didn't really sort of summarise the findings of this work again at this stage, given some of the concerns that have come out of our reports over the past 12 months or so. So ultimately, that's really just what the theme of the summary is this year, is just to sort of set out the overall context for the work that's performed and the findings that have come out of it. We do recognise that there have been some actions taken in response to some of this year. So you'll see in the past couple of reports, for example, that have come to you, you'll see in the management response forms in terms of responding to some of those key recommendations. I think we're assured that officers are bearing those conclusions in mind and what work needs to be done in response. Similarly, there's been recent recruitment into the finance team, which should help on the accounts production side of things as well. But really, Chair, it was just to initially sort of set that overall context for what this summary is trying to achieve this year, is really just to summarise all these discrete pieces of information, I suppose, the various reports that we do, and just try and summarise it into an overall story for everyone to read and understand what it's telling us over the past year or so. So that's the overall context. I'll just hand briefly over to Sarah Jane as well, who'll just run through some of the details of the summary as well.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. So as well as underlying that sort of the overall findings, and just want to kind of stress the bit at the end of that paragraph really, which is about going forward, we are looking to the council to demonstrate the impact of all the different management response forms. And I know we've heard some of the good progress being made today, but both from an officer and councillor perspective. So it's really important that we have that collective ownership of the council's progress. And to be fair, that is something that I know was discussed back in 2019 as well. The annual audit summary also then includes some key facts about the council. Hopefully you'll be familiar with some of these because it tends to be facts that we've included in the last couple of years, and then goes on to talk about what our duties are. Again, hopefully be familiar with those in terms of the audit of the accounts, our value for money, what we call our proper arrangements duties, and the sustainable development principle, which we've talked about earlier. It also then summarises what we found in terms of the audit of the 22-24 financial audit statements, and just to highlight there, we gave an unqualified true and fair opinion, but there were some aspects where the draft statements where the quality was poor, and we've touched on some issues around capacity in the finance team. It then goes on to talk about, give a summary of the work that we've undertaken over the last 12 months or so, and gives you hyperlinks to those reports. And we've obviously covered off the commissioning and the planning services report today. And then again at the end, just links to the national reports, which we covered earlier in the work programme timetable update. But I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you both for that update. I think probably the overarching thing is financial stress, isn't it? Is the issue, but then that, perhaps that means that your processes should be better, not worse in some ways. But we're also aware of the capacity issues which we've suffered over the last couple of years, which appear now that the garden is more rosy in that department. So yeah, we do seem to be heading in a good direction. Are there any comments on the audit summary? Check my... Yes, please do.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah Jane. On that point, just to clarify for everyone as well, all of the recommendations have been put into our internal system here to look at. We plan to bring a report back to this committee looking at those key areas, particularly around performance, to give assurance both to the committee members and yourselves that those actions are being dealt with. We have made strides forward. Various elements have been brought to this committee, but what we were thinking of doing, and the process has been agreed internally, is to bring all that together as a response basically to that report that was presented, so that all those things are brought together and we can actually look at the journey that the council has been on, and more importantly the key aspects that we taken forward.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, that's a good update. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, well, I think does that finish your input? Are you staying? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, which is Regional Internal Audit Service Charter. Is that yourself, Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's Andrew Wathen here, Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. And we're going to talk about the Regional Internal Audit Charter for committee this afternoon. So just as a way as an introduction, the Charter is how we operate, function as an internal audit team and service, and it's something that we bring to committee on an annual basis for you to consider and to approve. So moving forward into 25-26, this will be the Charter that we'll be working towards. Generally, over the last couple of years, it's just been topped and tailed. A couple of minor things we've included or added to make it to improve it further than the previous year's charter. This year, Chair, I've done quite a significant review because of the introduction of the Global Internal Audit Standards, which members should be familiar with by now, because I've talked about it infinitum. They came into effect from April 25, so the new charter reflects the fact that we now need to comply with the Global Internal Audit Standards. So the charter itself is about how we operate, how we function, how we deliver our internal audit service, the relationships we have with key officers within the organisation, and the access rights we have as an internal audit team, and that I have as the head of audit. So the charter itself is split into 4 key areas, which are purpose, authority and responsibility, number 1. Number 2, independence and objectivity, how we demonstrate that, how we're keen to demonstrate that. Proficiency and due professional care. And the 4th one is the quality assurance and improvement programme. And there are a few aspects which feed into that. In terms of the appendices, we've added a glossary of terms because the definitions have slightly been updated with the new standards coming on board. I've incorporated a section of the new standards, which is domain 2, ethics and professionalism, because we no longer have a code of ethics to comply with. It's all part of the standards, and that's complemented by SIPFA's application note and code of practice for internal audit within the local government in the UK. That links in with the 7 principles of public life, which myself and my team need to comply with, along with the Council's Code of Corporate Governance. The main changes, if I can refer members to 4.5, which is page 73 of your pack, are outlined in that paragraph. So I've changed reference to public sector internal audit standards to global internal audit standards. I have to make sure we include a statement which says that we will comply with those standards, and for members' assurance, we were fully compliant with the previous standards. We do a self-assessment on an annual basis, and every 5 years we will need to do an external peer assessment. That will continue moving forward, and the latest peer assessment was that we were fully compliant. As already mentioned, update to key definitions. I've added in an element where each partner, each organisation has a zero tolerance to fraud, bribery and corruption, and also added links specifically into the global internal audit standards and SIPFA reference documents. The other key element is that we now have to have a mandate of why we operate internal audit within local government, and that's because of the Audit and Accounts Regulations 2014. Prior legislation also incorporates that information. So I don't intend to go through the document in significant detail, but just to make you aware, there are 2 versions of the Charter included in your papers. There's a clean version, which we can take, hopefully members will approve moving forward, and then there's a previous version which is highlighted, where the yellow highlights are areas I've removed, blue highlights are areas I've added in, for ease of reference if members wanted to note what changes have been made since 24-25 Charter. So, Chair, if I could take you back to the recommendation for members to consider and approve the Charter for 25-26, that would be very much appreciated. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I think that's a sound basis for us moving forward, and the updates do seem sensible. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Thomas.
Before I ask my question, just to thank you as well for just putting in, solving some of these acronyms for us and putting the full titles in so we can work that out. That's very useful. But my question is, obviously this would have to be passed by us and possibly full council. So would these terminology and this go into our constitution so we all work from it, because our internal audit as well?
Thanks, Councillor. No, it's not part of your constitution. It's part of my regional internal audit service. It's something I need to have in place to comply with the standards. So every internal audit team within the local government across the UK must have a charter. That's why we bring it to Governance and Audit Committee for you to approve it, to make sure you're happy with it, but it doesn't need to form part of the constitution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report. It's nice to have what we're doing and we'll take it forward, because I think you worked hard, really hard at it, and tried to educate the lay members, I guess, simple as that. But I'd like to move the report as well to take the next step, because if we're going to report this back to full council, we've got to support it there as members. So I'd like to move the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Will somebody second that? So that's approved. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair.
And then I think the next item is it yours or Jones? Which is all right. I'm over a page, isn't it? It's the annual internal audit strategy. For 25-26, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Joan Davis, the Deputy Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the Governance and Audit Committee with the annual internal audit strategy and risk-based plan for 25-26 for approval. The proposed Regional Internal Audit Service audit strategy is at Appendix A. The strategy demonstrates in detail how the Internal Audit Service will be delivered in accordance with our Charter, which, as you know, is reviewed annually. This includes the methodology used to develop the Internal Audit Annual Plan and the approach taken when undertaking audits. The strategy also includes the definition of internal audit as per the Global Internal Audit Standards, the Section 151 Officer Responsibility, and the information to be provided to this committee. The Global Internal Audit Standards require a risk-based audit plan to be produced to cover the Council's overall control environment, including risk, governance and internal controls as far as practical. The proposed annual risk-based plan for 25-26 is therefore Appendix B. The plan has been compiled having regard to discussions and information received from Chief Officers, by reviewing the Corporate Risk Register, the Corporate Plan and having regard to previous audits and issues. It also includes the audits that were ongoing and the audits not started from 24-25. The plan provides this committee with an overview of the work to be undertaken, which will offer sufficient coverage to enable the Head of Internal Audit to be able to provide an opinion at the end of 25-26. The proposed annual plan is flexible to allow for changing circumstances and events that may occur, such as requests to respond to new issues that may emerge during the year. The Governance and Audit Committee will receive updates on how the plan is being progressed and any changes that may be required on a quarterly basis. Appendix B therefore provides the detail of the audit areas to be reviewed and a proposed outlined scope. There are currently 32 items listed at Appendix B which will provide an audit opinion. During the year, the number will increase, as audits currently shown as one line will be developed during the year. For example, the schools programme at line 18, the IT programme line 14, and the finance programme at line 9. The remaining items to Appendix B include work to be undertaken by internal audit, but will not necessarily provide an audit opinion. That's all I'd like to say. So if I bring you back to the recommendation, Chair, that was the committee is recommended to consider and approve the draft internal audit strategy at Appendix A and the draft annual risk-based audit plan Appendix B for 25-26. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Are there any questions from the committee? No? Can we move to approve that? And second? Thank you, Sue. Okay, so that's approved. Thank you for the minute. And then we're with the internal audit report.
Thanks, Chair. Back to me. Joan's just given an overview of our plan for 25-26, and this is the annual report for 24-25, looking back in terms of the work we've done and the opinions we've issued here at Merthyr. So this is my annual report, which ties in with what Joan says with the planning report, and also ties in with the Charter and the Global Internal Audit Standards expectations. So in terms of the overall picture, Chair, it's been a positive year for Merthyr, and we've completed 82% of the audit plan against a target of 80%. So we've had good coverage across all service areas, and 87% of our assurance opinions have either been substantial or reasonable. Again, a good place to be in terms of governance, risk management and internal control. There were only 4 limited assurance opinions, and that information has been presented to committee previously in our quarterly updates. So in terms of the details of the report, Chair, again, I don't intend to go through in any detail, but I'll pick up some salient points if I could. If I can refer members to paragraph 4.4 on page 145, there's a table there which identifies the number of individual assurance opinions we've issued: substantial, reasonable, limited and no assurances. Again, really reassuring to note that there have been 0 no assurance opinions in 23-24 or 24-25. And I've also incorporated a year-on-year comparison just for members to see how well we're doing in 24-25. The overall opinion is that I can give is a reasonable level of assurance, and I'll work my way towards that as we carry on this afternoon. So in terms of the body of the report, the opinions which we use are set out in Table 1, paragraph 2.2, which page 151. Members should be familiar with those in terms of my quarterly updates: substantial, reasonable, limited and no assurance, with the appropriate definition accompanying them. The next table, that sets out the opinions we've issued in 24-25 against follow-ups, financial systems, other audits, schools and grants, just to give members a flavour of the type of work we incorporate. And in figure 1 there's a table giving members good assurance that we've got good opinions across the board for 24-25. Picking up on what Joan's already talked about, the plan and how the plan is delivered. Table 4, paragraph 2.6, shows that we've completed 82% of the plan, and of which 76% was opinion related. Again, a very good place to be. With regards to the limited opinions, we've identified a very brief summary in the papers, Chair, but all of those have been brought to committee's attention previously in my quarterly updates. With regards to recommendations, we do make recommendations in the report where we identify weaknesses, and we prioritise those in terms of high, medium and low. The team will follow up high and medium recommendations, and the manager is responsible for addressing any low recommendations. As set out in Table 5, which is paragraph 4.2, the majority of recommendations that we've made are either medium or low, with only 7% being high recommendations, where something needs to be implemented quite quickly to address a problem or mitigate a potential risk. Next section talks about counter fraud work, and the annual fraud report will be presented to you later this afternoon. But the authority is involved with the National Fraud Initiative, referred to as the NFI, and we as an internal team work with your fraud officer to coordinate that on a biannual basis. At the end of every audit, we send out a client satisfaction questionnaire, and just to make sure that we are doing a good job, we're getting appropriate feedback, and we've got a very good response rate in Merthyr. We have a 62% response rate, which is slightly better than where we were last year. Very positive comments. I'm happy to take on board positive and negative comments because we can learn from the negative comments moving forward. But as you can see, paragraph 6.3, the comments we've received back are very positive. With regards to staff training and delivering a professional service, Joan and myself encourage the team to do additional training, and we support CPDs, continued professional development, and we've now got staff studying for SIPFA and IIA professional qualifications, which can only enhance that situation moving forward. There's reference to the public sector internal audit standards because it relates to 24-25, and it also there's a section around the global internal audit standards because that will be what we'll need to work towards in 25-26. So that's just a bit of background information for members there, Chair. And that all that work then is summarised in the appendices, but that enables me to provide an overall opinion, which is set out at Appendix A, which is split into risk management, governance arrangements and internal control, all of which have been given a reasonable assurance opinion, which leads me into an overall opinion for the adequacy and effectiveness of the internal control, governance and risk management arrangements as reasonable assurance for 24-25. Appendices on the annexes included in the report show that the list of all the audit jobs we've undertaken with the respective opinions and the number of recommendations. Then moving on, the progress against the plan, jobs we finalised, jobs that were in draft, jobs that were not done in 24-25, but will be considered and have been considered in the plan for 25-26, along with the recommendations. We've included the update with regards to implementation of recommendations and any that were overdue, given the deadlines that we agreed with service managers, and also a blank copy of our client satisfaction questionnaire so members can see what we're asking our auditees. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks to the team for the work over the year. Any questions from the floor or from teams? I think Sue Erickson's first.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to say thank you to Andrew and the Audit team for all the hard work this year. It's reassuring to have the overall opinion for the year, and also to see the audit opinions in table 3 on page 152 of the papers, showing the trend seemingly being positive in terms of the percentages there of assurances on each of the audits. I'll come back to you on my question because my question's just gone up my head. Apologies, but just to say thank you as well.
Shall I move to Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for the report. A really positive report, and it's great for us to see so many improvements, as through the last year. The question is, do you believe that the appointment of a director of governance has helped achieve these results?
That seems like a loaded question, Councillor. I haven't got an opinion on that. As I say, in everything we do, I need to be independent and objective. So we agree the audit plan with yourselves to give as much coverage as we can across the board, different service areas, but we can't audit everything every year, so we have to do it on a cyclical basis. That audit plan then goes to CMT, they approve it, and they have an opportunity to contribute to that plan moving forward. So we undertake our audit in line with that plan, and we report back to CMT and to Governance and Audit Committee on a quarterly basis in terms of progress. Whether that person is in post or not doesn't affect the way in which we operate, and therefore we only report on what we audit, and we identify evidence. We report on strengths and weaknesses, and we formulate an overall opinion of the year based on our audit work. So, a long-winded way of saying I can't comment on that question.
It appears to members, not to myself anyway, that it has as an improvement. There seems to be more, governance reports coming through quite frequently. So it does seem that way to me anyway.
Thank you for the comment there. I was going to say, I think people need to bed in a little bit, don't they? But I think the signs are definitely positive, aren't they? Did you want to come back, Sue?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a simple question, really, but overall, the overall opinion was reasonable, which is pleasing to hear. Can you hear me? Sorry. But I just wondered, from Audit's point of view, where there's room for improvement to raise that maybe to substantial, to sort of aim for that overall substantial. I understand the plan is risk-based. I understand that it changes every year. I just wondered what your views were in terms of moving that. And my second part to that question is, how do we compare? How do we compare to perhaps other councils that, in terms of lessons learned maybe to the council? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, that's an interesting question. I would say that if the council and all the services it provides are fully compliant with the financial regulations, contract procedure rules, policies and procedures of the organisation, then there would be a substantial assurance across the board. We know in reality that doesn't happen. There are probably 1,200 different services provided by this organisation, which we could potentially audit. So they vary, but we do check in terms of compliance with those key documents on a regular basis as part of our audits. If we had more substantial audits, then obviously that would lead into an overall substantial opinion. But we base our audits on strengths and weaknesses because they're balanced, and it's very difficult to compare year on year because we're auditing different things year on year. We might audit core financial systems, but there'll be different elements to those systems. We might audit schools, but they will be different schools. So it's difficult to compare year on year. But that could be the aim. The aim would be to get a substantial opinion across the board. But that is very rare. It doesn't compare with any other organisation I've been involved with previously. They're all reasonable, and Joan and I have been doing this a long time. And however we mix it up, whatever we include in the audit plan, somehow it always comes back to reasonable, because that is the average kind of opinion that we're issuing across the board. So that's where we are in terms of comparisons. In terms of sharing good practice, yeah, that's part of the benefit of the Regional Internal Audit Service. We've got 2 other partners on board, so the team do audits across all 3 partners, and we're picking up good practice from all 3, and we're sharing that when we can. When we come to do our audits, we identify potential weaknesses, and we're including recommendations which we may have picked up from other areas of good practice. So we do try and do that. We try and do that in terms of the CRSA report which we put in for schools. So we've got a control risk self-assessment which we send out to schools. Joan and the team then coordinate the responses, and we report to the Director of Education. She then sends that out to all heads in terms of good and bad practice. So that is a good example of sharing good practice. So we try our best for that. We're always looking to improve in terms of sharing good practice, but it's always in the back of our minds when we are undertaking our audits.
Thanks, Sue. I think I'd be concerned if there was substantial assurance, given some of the other criticisms that are contained in papers. I think it's reflective of where we are, isn't it? And we're trying to move in the right direction. So, okay. Thank you. Okay. So I think if we.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Do carry on, Councillor.
Ladies talking, see, you can't interrupt the woman talking, can you? I get a row every time. Anyway, Mark, the report is great. Good. It's nice positive remarks come out of it. But the only trouble is I'm a new boy in the block. But how do I get a bit more extra training? I've been here a few years, but it's the only committee I've never been on since I've been here. So I'd like to have a bit more extra training and expertise what you're talking about to take it forward. Because I've been in other committees, but when you talk about finance and service delivery and everything else, and it was the same as some other department. But when you talk about funding and money, it's a big issue.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Councillor. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, we'll certainly take that on board. We started the ball rolling in terms of the training schedule we said we would bring on board. I think Andrew's organised a risk management session. We'll see how that goes, and then we'll be working with Andrew and Craig to roll out further training for the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we can, I think is it back to yourself?
Recommendation is to consider a note to
to note. Oh, right. Yeah. So the recommendation is to note the report. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So if we can move on to the annual corporate fraud report, which I think is over to yourself, John.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 11 is the annual corporate fraud report for 24-25. So the annual corporate fraud report outlines the actions the council has taken to further improve its resilience to fraud during 24-25. Fraud and error in the public sector continues to impact society both socially and economically. When fraudulent activities are perpetrated against the council, they divert and diminish limited resources, jeopardising services for residents and incurring expenses for taxpayers. Therefore, fraud perpetrated against the local council is far from victimless. If I can direct committee to Appendix A, which is the corporate fraud report, again, I don't want to go right the way through it, but if we start at Section 2, which is proactive work. So the council's got a counter-fraud strategy and framework which underpins the council's commitment to prevent all forms of fraud, bribery and corruption. And within that framework, there is there's steps to support continual improvement. That's listed for you at Annex 1, but if I just briefly run through the progress we've made on those steps during 24-25. So the first item there at 2.2 is the fraud risk register. So there is a fraud risk register in place. It tells you there in paragraph 2.2 what areas we consider in the fraud risk register, and each year we reevaluate those to make sure via horizon scanning that they're considered within the audit plan, and also with the fraud officer areas where to consider and where to target her training and her resource. Similarly, fraud policies, they're very important because then everybody knows what is expectations. It says in 2.6 the fraud policies that were considered and reviewed and approved during the year by this committee, and they're instrumental in allowing us to do our work as far as fraud and fraud is concerned. Other council policies complement these, such as the whistleblowing policy, the ICT code of conduct and various HR policies. Key during the year is training and fraud awareness. The council's fraud officer has undertaken a lot of fraud training during the year. She is involved in induction training for new starters to make sure that she's known straight away, and that the message of fraud and corruption is given at an early stage. She's also invited to certain sections teams meetings and gives the same advice and guidance there. We're part of a NAFN, which is the National Anti-Fraud Network, and they send us alerts if there's fraud being perpetrated against other councils or other organisations across the country, and they're circulated on a regular basis. In addition, the council's website and the intranet has been developed during the year, and it's made it much more valuable in terms of referrals. Section 3 is the National Fraud Initiative. During 24-25, we were coming to the end of the matches that were released in 2022-24. Table 1 at 3.4 shows the results. So, as I said, it was the tail end of those matches, and 113 blue badge matches were addressed during the year. These weren't necessarily frauds. It was an opportunity for data cleansing, but members will notice that there is a Cabinet Office projected savings figure there, and that's the way that the National Fraud Office view the opportunity savings, if you like. When a blue badge is rescinded, it offers opportunity to generate car park income, etc. Annex 2 of your pack will actually show you what the methodology is around those Cabinet Office savings. As I said, 2024-25 was the end of one match, but it was also the beginning of another match. So in October 2024, we extracted data from the council systems. That was uploaded, and in January, matches came back. In total, 4,767 matches were given back to the council. As I said, these wouldn't necessarily indicate fraud. It could be fraud or error and an opportunity for data cleansing. These matches cover things such as housing benefit, council tax reduction, payroll, blue badges, creditors, licensing, etc. And it is possible that we could have further matches during the year. And these matches, our data has been matched against various data from other organisations such as HMRC, housing associations, etc. These matches, as I said, came back in January. The fraud officer has trained key contacts throughout the authority on what to look for on the matches, and she's worked closely with them to offer them advice and guidance. And you will get an update on the how that progresses during the year. The other match that we get are single person discount matches, and they're annual matches. So 3,970 matches were reviewed during 24-25, of which 34 were identified as fraud or error. So table 2 in Appendix A at 3.9 gives you a breakdown there of the 44 matches, and that accumulated into £16,786 of recoverable benefit that came back to the council. In addition, in November 2024, Audit Wales issued a self-appraisal checklist, and it was to help the participating bodies self-appraise how they are engaged with NFI. The council did complete that, and Audit Wales encouraged all participating bodies to complete the checklist and present it to those charged with governance. So I've appended that to your pack today at Annex 3. Section 4 is corporate fraud and corruption work. A lot of this links in very closely to our internal audit work, and there's some narrative around there of what Andrew's just covered with you this afternoon as far as how we get to our opinion. Included in there in 4.5 are some frauds that have been referred either to ourselves in internal audit or to your fraud officer who works very closely with us. You will see that there's 3 there in table 3, and 2 of them are still ongoing. In addition, the fraud officer is working on the council tax reduction and DWP benefit frauds. In 2015, all investigations relating to benefit fraud went back to the DWP, but now you've got your fraud officer in place, and she's got the adequate training and powers, and especially with the corporate fraud enforcement policy that this committee has approved and council then subsequently approved, we have the powers now that we're able to investigate, and if appropriate, give sanctions if anyone's found guilty of that. This is in the early days as far as Merthyr is concerned, but you can see that there were 91 referrals made during 24-25. If it's got DWP benefit, that has to go back to the DWP, but there is an opportunity to have a joint investigation if there are elements of council fraud within that referral. As I said, it's early days, but your fraud officer has, during 24-25, worked with her colleagues in DWP on 2 particular cases, and they're shown in table 5. In addition to that, there is a lot of joint working and partnerships. The fraud officer is an active member of the Wales-wide National Anti-Fraud Investigators Network. Andrew and I attend the Welsh Chief Auditors Group, and the fraud matters are discussed there on a regular basis. As I've already mentioned, the council is an active member of the National Anti-Fraud Network, and as well as that, we've got good working relationships with the police and other outside agencies. In addition, the benefit of having the council's fraud officer is supported by the Regional Internal Audit Service, and that gives her an opportunity to liaise very closely with the fraud officers in the Vale of Glamorgan Council and in Bridgend Council, so they do link in very closely and share best practice. Finally, at section 6 is the national studies, and as has already been mentioned earlier, Audit Wales during 24-25 did conduct a review of counter-fraud arrangements within the council, and your fraud officer liaised very closely with Audit Wales to ensure that all the requested documents were provided, and we're awaiting that report, which I think Sarah Jane said would be due before the autumn. That's all I'd like to run through, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that report, Joan. It's very thorough, gave us an understanding of that. I was just going to ask, do you think our fraud work provides value for money based upon assets recovered?
Thank you, Chair. Again, that's quite a difficult question because it's the unknown, isn't it? With fraud awareness training, you may be preventing things before you even get to any obvious financial savings. It's the preventative steps as well. I think it does. I think it's a very, very good presence. I think fraud is out there, and we have to accept it's out there, and we'll never know the extent that it's out there. But I think having a fraud officer present has certainly helped and raised awareness, and definitely staff within Merthyr now are more aware of it. So financial value is very difficult to quantify, but I think it's very important. Yes.
That's great. And do we publicise our results?
well, here is the results that we've got for 24-25, and I said this is almost the start because the fraud officer was new to post and she's only been, I think, for 2 full financial years. So it's published via this vehicle, the annual report, and we'll be doing 6 monthly reports to committee as far as the NFI matches are as well.
Right.
But if we, further down the line, if we do get a successful prosecution, obviously that would be reported as appropriate.
Yeah, I was just thinking of publicity as a preventative measure and using social media and those sorts of avenues to discourage fraud. Thank you. Are there any questions?
On good election report, fabulous. On the fraud issue, do you think we need more people in as a fraud issue? Because fraud, scam, call it what you want, it's getting worse in it. You know, people are watching people going around doing everything what they can. Do you think we need extra staff in the fraud department to take it forward?
Thank you. Again, that's really difficult for us to answer. I mean, as many staff as we could get as the budget allows would be amazing, and obviously that would be useful. But as far as the resource we've got, we think, you know, we've got the one fraud officer, which we're grateful for. You went for a number of years without one, and that's been great. And if there was a budget to allow for more officers, that would be really good as well. But we work within our means, so yeah.
And just to add to that, as John said, we're at an early stage in Merthyr in terms of development of that fraud. Hopefully, over time, that post will become self-financing for the fraud that we've identified and been able to recover back into the organisation. If that becomes more than one salary, then we can talk to Craig about increasing the number of fraud officers we have. But as I say, we're at very early stages at the moment. But that would be the intention for it to be self-financing moving forward.
Thank you. Chair, I'll support Martin on that because self-finance in some departments, you need it. You know, all the money goes in the pot sometimes and you need extra staff in different departments to take it forward to improve the service. So I think we should look at that serious and not just tick a box and say we talk about it. Is how really look at how we can work it because we've got some departments that are struggling, like with CCTV cameras, night shift. There's money there somewhere so we can work a system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So if that report can be noted for the committee. And a second. Thank you. And now if we can move forward to the internal audit forward work plan.
Governance and Audit Committee.
The governance and audit forward work plan, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon all. My name is Helen Harbord and I'm one of the Assistant Audit Managers for the Regional Internal Audit Service. The Governance and Audit Committee Forward Work Programme is a report that we bring to each meeting and ask members to approve. In order to assist the committee in ensuring that due consideration is given to all aspects of their core functions, the proposed Forward Work Programme for 25-26 is attached to Appendix A. The agenda items included within the Forward Work Programme are flexible and they're not set in stone, and additional agenda items may be presented to committee throughout the year, and the Forward Work Programme will be updated as necessary to reflect this. Shown on the table at paragraph 4.2 are the items scheduled to be presented at the next meeting, scheduled for the 1st of September 2025. There are a total of 10 agenda items. Committee members are asked to endorse this schedule and confirm the list of officers they would like to invite for each item, if appropriate, and indicate whether any additional information or research is required. At this point, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the forward work plan. Any questions? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, obviously I'm quite new to this committee as well. You know, I've been a councillor not as long as Bill, but I'm quite new, but quite new. And you know, just looking at 10 reports coming for one afternoon, That's a lot of reading. Do we think that's a little bit too much for us, or do you think what does more experienced governance and audit committee members think? I think maybe 7 or 8, but 10 is quite a bit.
So volume-wise, I'd say that's about average.
Yeah, right. Okay, right. Okay. It's a lot to take in there, mate, isn't it?
But yeah, it is a lot to take in. Yeah. And some important issues today.
Yeah.
So if we can move to approve the forward work plan. And a second for that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So that's the meeting come to conclusion. If there's any further comment that anyone would like to add, I think we've had a useful day today. Some really good papers from Audit Wales, some very good responses and promising replies from the council, and we've got the internal audit structure set up and some good fraud work in place going forward. So the next meeting is for the 1st September, I believe. Yep. 1st September, when Martin Veal will be back in the chair and return from his Iberian experience, and normal service will resume. So thank you to all the executives, Audit Wales, and indeed to the committee members for being here today. And that concludes the Governance and Audit Committee meeting. Thank you.